How long were you in the city of Minneapolis, Robert?
I was there for 8 days.
8 days. My word. I guess I could go macro here and say, what'd you see? I mean, I know what you wrote about, but for those who may not know, what did you see, Robert?
I got there Thursday night, and that was the night that they set fire to the 3rd Precinct police station. And so that was kind of my first impression. This really wild group of mostly teens, very mixed crowd in terms of racial background. A lot of women out there, surprisingly, as well. Just a really diverse group, just laying waste to this several square block area of the city. And then you wake up the next morning and you start attending some of these protests and some of these rallies and these memorials for Floyd. And I think you begin to realize, and I'm a newbie at covering this sort of thing, but you begin to realize that everything that you're seeing on CNN, on Fox, a lot of the things that you're seeing on television are the highlight reel from the night before. But the stuff that's happening during the day, the really positive conversations, the people cleaning up, that's not really what makes for good TV. So once I was there for a couple of days and got the feel of it, I tried to focus some of my attention on kind of balancing that out and telling the stories of the people who were activists, who were trying to make a difference. One of them actually, kind of intersected with sports for me was Royce White, the former NBA first-round pick who, played all of a few minutes in the NBA, and he's become, a protest activism leader out in Minneapolis.
Tell me more about his story. I read your piece, and I thought it was really interesting, obviously, having you on here. No, it was excellent. How'd you come across him? Let's unpack his story a little bit here for the listeners and viewers here, Robert.
Yeah. Well, the situation is so chaotic there on the ground. There's a million stories, so you just kind of have to go outside and start talking to people. And right by our hotel, we were staying at the Residence Inn, the 3 Post reporters that were there, was this enormous march. And then, so I started walking in it and talking to people and finding out how it started. And it turns out that Royce White and a group of 30 Minnesota current and former basketball players, football players, college, pro, what have you, they started a group text last summer about getting together and finding a gym to work out. And so that they've kept that group text going. And then when this video came out of George Floyd after he was killed, Royce White said to the group, those of us that have a prominent voice in this community, we need to do something. And Royce has been an advocate for mental health in sports and in education for a long time, ever since he was drafted into the NBA and was unable to fly because he has this generalized anxiety disorder. And there was some hope that he could overcome it, but he never really did. He spent a lot of time bouncing around the developmental leagues and actually played up in Canada riding by bus. Won the Canadian MVP 1 year and then was runner-up the next year, and then semi-retired and got into the Big Three last year, but just hasn't gotten over this fear of flying. And so he's been in Minneapolis working in the community on mental health. And then this is his first time on the front lines of a protest. And he starts this group of 200 people at U.S. Bank Stadium where the Vikings play and starts walking. And they end up with several thousand marching down I-35 West across the Mississippi. And they all take a knee. And then he addresses the crowd and talks about how, they don't want to show us nonviolently protesting like this. So we have to, try to bring as much attention to it as we can. But what he talked about in terms of the visceral reaction to that video and being on the front lines of a protest for the first time was something I heard over and over in Minneapolis. I think a lot of people who were on the fence or on the sidelines before but sympathize with this sort of activism have been brought out of the shadows just by the visceral nature of that killing.